Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the second panel of the virtual pre-conference celebrating Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba Day in New York City. As you may know, the main event will take place on the 28th with another virtual conference and events taking place in Harlem. My name is Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, and I will be moderating our panel this morning. And it's for me an honor to introduce our main speaker of today, Dr. Ahmed Pirzada, joining us from London or from Birmingham in England. Dr. Pirzada earned a BA in Arabic and 2 masters, one in philosophy and another in politics. He did his dissertation work at the Department of Theology of the University of Birmingham in England, where he wrote a dissertation entitled The Epistemology of Ahmadou Bamba. This dissertation makes a unique and invaluable contribution to the scholarship on the Muridiyya, which until recently was mostly dominated by anthropologists, sociologists, and political scientists, mostly interested in the economic and political dimension of the Murid order. We are fortunate to have Dr. Pirzada with us today. I have a lot more to say about his many qualifications, including being an accountant and a consultant in teaching economics, but I will keep it short today for the sake of time. We are already running out of time. We are 10 minutes ahead of schedule, behind schedule, I mean. So we're going to listen to Dr. Pirzada for about 10 to 15 minutes. CD, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And then for the remainder of the time, we will be listening to comment and contribution from the other members of the panel, Sheikh Soyibu Kebe particularly, and others that have the ability to join us here. So Dr. Pirzada, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, my brothers and sisters. It's a pleasure to address you today on a very important issue, which is Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba's legacy of non-violence. So I'm going to basically read this little paper I've written. It's not very long because I knew I'd only have 10 to 15 minutes. So let me start straight away. I'm only going to address the first paragraph briefly, and then I'll read the rest out, more or less as it's written. I hope you can see it on the screen. Okay, now there has been a significant degree of academic activity on Ahmadou Bamba for more than half a century. The issue, I think, is that it's only to a limited extent is it in terms of Ahmadou Bamba's own thought, ideas, and writings. So that's what this paper wants to challenge. If we speak about Ahmadou Bamba and non-violence, let's speak about non-violence in terms of Ahmadou Bamba's own ideas. Going to paragraph 2, one of the most important challenges in any discourse regarding Ahmadou Bamba is to persuade people to take him on his own terms. A mystic whose life was based on devotion to knowledge and worship and to community formation may be more profitably interpreted on terms that are his own. Now, we are fortunate that we have a large volume of writings from Ahmadou Bamba. If you go to the library in Touba, you see how many hundreds of books he wrote. And in those writings, he transparently stated his concerns and ideas. Now, Ahmadou Bamba and non-violence is a typical example of what I'm addressing, that we need to interpret Ahmadou Bamba on his own terms, not in terms of, as Sheikh said just now, that in terms of what the anthropologists or the sociologists want to understand. What did Ahmadou Bamba mean by non-violence? So there are 2 aspects which need to be addressed. First of all, what is non-violence with regard to Ahmadou Bamba? What does he think non-violence is, and how was it applied by him? These are 2 different questions. Now, I have not found this distinction in the literature at all, not the distinction of what is non-violence with regard to Ahmadou Bamba and how was it applied. Usually we don't have this distinction at all. So the ontological question of what Ahmadou Bamba means by non-violence is almost never addressed by anybody. We look upon, Ahmadou Bamba versus the colonialists. That's how it was applied by him. So I have not found this distinction in the literature. The first question may require, that is, what is non-violence with regard to Ahmadou Bamba? It may require a somewhat theoretical answer. Whereas one may seek a more practical answer to the second question of how did he apply non-violence. As far as I know, there has been little published on the first question. And if anything has been published on the second question, it addresses Ahmadou Bamba's struggle against the colonialists and his use of non-violence as a response to colonialism. So now I would not seek to relegate the anti-colonial aspect of Ahmadou Bamba's life, particularly as he lived the last 33 years of his life in exile and under house arrest. My contention is merely that it is necessary to regard the second aspect, that is his practical struggle using non-violence, as being based on the first. In other words, to formulate a discourse with regard to Ahmadou Bamba's legacy of non-violence as praxis based on his own theoretical ideas and concerns with regard to non-violence. Now, this is very important, otherwise we get the whole thing inverted. If we don't know what Ahmadou Bamba means by non-violence, what is the point of merely looking at how he applied it? So going on, nowadays, when we think of non-violence, we may think of such figures like Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Contrary to Gandhi in India, for example, the non-violence of Ahmadou Bamba was not a purely tactical or strategic type of non-violence, born of a philosophical dogmatism and used to secure a negotiated settlement with the British colonialists, thus facilitating a peaceful transition to independence. That is not to say that Gandhi did not hold, Mahatma Gandhi, we can't say that he did not hold his views on his religious and philosophical views seriously, but rather that he had gradually become intellectually convinced of their correctness and thus decided to adhere to these views. Now, there is a big literature on this. Gandhi's philosophical evolution through grappling with various religious and philosophical ideas until he came to adopt a certain form of Hinduism, a non-violent form, is, for example, a very popular study is B.R. Nanda's study on Mahatma Gandhi, published by the Oxford University Press in 1989. It shows you clearly the religious and philosophical evolution of Gandhi, the intellectual growth of Gandhi, where he grows to adhere to non-violent ideas. This is altogether different to the case of Ahmadou Bamba. His gentleness was primarily due to spiritual reasons, which must be regarded as the basis for the non-violence of Ahmadou Bamba, whereby he had attained a lofty spiritual station and had been divinely endowed with a laudable nature. An analogy between the reasons for the non-violence of Ahmadou Bamba and the reasons for the non-violence of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was made by Ahmadou Bamba by himself in the Qasida Mafatih al-Jinan wa Maghaliq al-Niran on pages 4 to 8. Now, I only have 10 minutes, and this is a 60-page Qasida. So, and if I really was going to speak at length, I would have spoken for at least half an hour on this Qasida. But okay, I'm only going to speak for 2 minutes on this Qasida. Now, it's a 60-page Qasida, okay, but one of the main points is, in the case of Ahmadou Bamba striving to imitate the Prophet totally, this had led to him being close to the Prophet and thus gaining spiritual purity and the protection from God. This is the point that the Qasida seeks to make. On page 6, Ahmadou Bamba states, "My religion is the love of God and the love of the one by whom the enemy is suppressed." In other words, the love of God and the love of the Prophet are the weapons which Ahmadou Bamba is going to use to suppress the enemy. Page 6 of Mafatih al-Jinan further states that Ahmadou Bamba was forgiven and purified. He states, "He, God, purified my existence as a servant." And on page 7, he says, "My Lord eradicated my evil. How wonderful is my Lord." Having reached this station of closeness to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and having gained purification from God, he was now protected from harm. Again, on page 7 of Mafatih al-Jinan, Ahmadou Bamba states, "He directs dislikable things to other than me. He protects my sanctity." And also, Ahmadou Bamba states, "He repelled harm to other than me." And so it was repelled. To summarize then, and I'm speaking very summarily here, 60-page Qasida, I'm speaking about it in 2 minutes. The non-violence of Ahmadou Bamba consisted of him striving to imitate the Prophet, which had led Ahmadou Bamba to, number 1, gain purity and a lofty spiritual nature. Number 2, enjoy the eradication of all his evil traits. And 3, to receive divine protection in the face of a hostile enemy. Therefore, this divine approach to non-violence was altogether different to Gandhi's approach. Now, what are you going to call this divine approach to non-violence? Are you going to call it non-violence of Islam, Tawhidic non-violence, non-violence of the unity of God? What term are we going to use? I'll come up with a term. Let's see what you think of it. For Ahmadou Bamba, it had become a form of non-violence born out of certitude, as God had assured him that he would be preserved from all human machinations. Therefore, before the colonial authorities sought to adopt aggressive tactics against Ahmadou Bamba, he had already received certitude of divine protection. Right, so I would like to utilize the term transcendent non-violence, something that transcends material, in the words. The word transcendent has many meanings you can apply to it. There is a Kantian term and so on and so forth. But transcendent in the sense of something beyond material means. So transcendent non-violence can be applied to as a term which describes the non-violence of Ahmadou Bamba, as opposed to an ideological type of non-violence which Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King applied. Furthermore, I would like to suggest that looking at Ahmadou Bamba's non-violence solely in terms of the politics of colonialism would be to miss the main point of his life's work, as stated by him, which involved striving to undertake personal spiritual growth and to create a society which was within these parameters. You know, that's the presentation I want to give. But you know, Ahmadou Bamba said, "Ujahidu bil ulumi wa tuqa." His main struggle was with knowledge and piety. So this was his main concern. So his non-violence needs to be seen in that light. So I hope I haven't spoken for more than 10 minutes. I think that's my 10 minutes up. So I'm very happy to take any questions.